Welcome back, everybody, to this week 6 of the E.O. Smith Sports Talk podcast. We're here on a Wednesday. A lot of great storylines to talk about, a lot of great segments coming up for you guys, a lot of sports being covered. Let's start first with the NBA and the NBA draft, though, coming up tonight. Huge storylines coming out of the NBA. Obviously, CP3 traded to the Suns. We got a ton to talk about, and I'm joined here now with Brendan and Leon, ready to talk some NBA and some NBA draft. Let's start first with that CP3 trade, though. CP3 was traded from the Oklahoma City Thunder to the Suns. They'll pair him with Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton and gives OKC more picks. I think OKC has like the highest total of picks for the upcoming drafts. Are they contenders now, Brendan? Do you think they can contend in the hotly contested West?
Yeah, well, first off, I'm hype about this week's episode. I think got a lot to talk about in a busy NBA, especially tonight with the big draft coming up. I think there's going to be a lot of deals tonight. We always see a lot of movement on draft night. I'm just excited to see what my Celtics do, maybe move Gordon Hayward. But talking about the Suns quickly, I'm not sure that they're contenders yet because I'm not quite sold on DeAndre Ayton, especially in today's game where he can't shoot the three ball. I liked him coming out. He hasn't really impressed too much. He had a good season last year, but I'm not sure he kind of makes a big three. I think Chris Paul and Devin Booker are two superstars in this league. It's kind of a big two with a third star. But when you compare that to LeBron, AD, and then Dennis Schroeder, who we'll talk about later, or Kawhi and Paul George, and maybe they add a third superstar. I just think with all these super teams, I'm not really sure they're a super team yet, but Devin Booker's young, DeAndre Ayton's really young. So we'll see how they develop. I like that. I like the addition of CP3. I think he's a stud player. In the playoffs this year, he really looked like a top 10 player in the NBA. So we'll see.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting points there. I would have to disagree with that, though. I see it more of like a superstar with two side stars. CP3 is getting older. I see him regressing. I don't like Ayton, like you said, as much as other people do. And so I kind of see it as kind of like a main piece in Booker and then two side guys in CP3 and Ayton. But that takes care of the Suns and let's move to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Like, obviously, they have a ton of picks in the upcoming draft. Obviously, they're trying to blow it up and rebuild with Westbrook gone. Now CP3 is gone. When do you think they'll be ready to contend again? And what are some pieces do you think they need to be able to get there?
Yeah, I like what they're doing, stockpiling all those draft picks. But I really don't think in today's NBA that's going to work to try to slowly rebuild. Obviously, the Celtics were able to do it, but what they did was they got first-round picks from the Nets, who became the worst team in the NBA for, 4 or 5 straight years. So the Celtics got in that Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart, a lot of lottery picks, obviously Romeo Langford now. But I'm curious to see because obviously we think the Suns will be pretty good, and the Thunder have just made a bunch of moves with teams that are, at the top of the NBA. So those picks probably later in the first round, you don't find too many gems late in the first round in the NBA. First round picks are not as valuable as say in the NFL where, 2 first round picks is massive. So we'll see. I mean, just looking at tonight, there's 3 players who are, bona fide superstars in the NBA, but beyond that, you really don't know, which is why I'm not a big fan of tanking in the NBA because of the draft lottery. I mean, you never know what picks you're going to get. So we'll see. I just don't think it's a smart way to rebuild in the NBA.
Okay. Yeah, that's a lot of good points there. And I would have to agree with that. Obviously the NBA is a different game than the NFL. First, you need like a high first round pick, like a top 10 pick to really make a difference with the player you're getting. Let's move on to the Bucks now, who did get a high first round pick way back, and they drafted a perennial superstar in Giannis Antetokounmpo, and they've had trouble pairing him with stars and getting a team around him to really compete for a title. However, they just traded for Jrue Holiday and acquired Bogdan Bogdanovic on top of having Giannis and Chris Middleton. How prepared is this team to compete in the East and compete for a title, Leon?
I think everyone is sleeping on Bogdan Bogdanovic. He fits Giannis's game perfectly. Like I believe he's a stud. Like he's a stud shooter. He makes every shot. If you watch him, he's nasty. And Jrue Holiday, I believe they overpaid for him, but it was a lot of first round draft picks in the later rounds, like Brendan said. So I don't think it would matter, but I still believe they overpaid him. Jrue Holiday, great defender, great both side 2-way player. So it definitely helped Giannis, and their main goal is to make it to the finals, and Giannis has to step up because he has shown in the playoffs that he cannot score, which with Drew Holiday and Bogdan, he got to show that he can make it past that make it past the semifinals.
I just want to chime in here, Alex, really quickly. There's so many people all over the sports world in the NBA, like Leon, who think the Bucks overpay, but I completely disagree because the Bucks are going to be a top 5, top 10 team in the NBA for the next couple of years with Middleton, Giannis, Bogdan Bogdanovic, and Drew Holiday, who's a great two-way point guard. We'll see with 4 stars and obviously Giannis, who's been 2-time MVP of the league. I think those picks are so late in the first round that you have no idea what you're going to get with them. They're not that valuable. And for the Pelicans, I don't even think it's a good move to get such late first-round picks because, those are 4 total guesses on players that likely don't pan out. Maybe one of them pans out. So we'll see. I think it's a great move for the Bucks. You're in win now mode. Try to lure Giannis to re-sign to a long-term deal because obviously in Milwaukee, when you have a player of his caliber, you need to sign him to a long-term deal in that market.
I would totally agree. Giannis is their guy, and they need to do whatever they can to keep him. He is the heart and soul of that team, and he's the heart and soul of that franchise. Let's move on now to the situation with the Houston Rockets. Obviously, they have tried to push the envelope in the West and really tried to compete for a title, and it's kind of starting to fall apart now. Harden wants out. Westbrook wants out. What do they have to do going forward, and where do you see their superstars going to?
Yeah, I guess I'll start here. I think going forward, if they can't, get James Harden to sign a max deal, which it sounds like, obviously ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski reporting, Harden turned down a contract to become the first ever NBA player to get over $50 million a year, which is just absurd that he turns that down. But if they can't get him to resign, which it obviously sounds like they can't, they need to move him for young players who have shown promise. Like I think if the rumors are true about Boston targeting him, they need to get either Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum. They cannot settle for Kemba Walker and Gordon Hayward, 2 players who are 30 years old, massive contracts. They need to get young superstars that can keep Houston in the hunt in the stacked Western Conference because obviously getting picks and Kemba and Gordon Hayward from the Celtics isn't going to do it. And then as far as Russell Westbrook, they need to trade him to somebody like the Pistons, the Knicks, a team where he can absolutely carry the load as he did in Oklahoma City because he's shown that's the only way he can be successful in this league without a jump shot. He's a ball dominant point guard, and when you can't shoot in this league as a ball dominant point guard, it just doesn't really work out. That's why James Harden and he want out of Houston, and they don't want to be together anymore. So I think Houston, it would be a good move for Houston to trade him to a bad team like the Pistons or like the Knicks because you can get high overall picks in the first round for the next couple of years. You just know the Knicks and the Pistons won't be any good for the next few years. They never are. So I think that's what they should do.
Yeah, let's talk about those Celtics. Gordon Hayward's deadline for his player option is extended to Tuesday, I believe it is. And so they've got some options for him. Thursday, sorry. They've got some options for him. Obviously, sign and trade, opt in and trade if they want to get him out of there, or he can opt out and sign elsewhere, or he can stay with the Celtics. He's an older player. He hasn't had any real success after his injury against the Cavs a few years back. What do you see as the most likely option for Hayward going forwards? And what do you think is the best situation for the Celtics, Leon?
I think the best situation for the Celtics is for Hayward to opt out, restructure that contract, and maybe try to trade him and get some picks or players back. But I believe the Celtics are done in the East. They can't. You're not gonna get past the Nets or the Bucks.
Whoa.
I think they're done. I think they're just sitting there I don't know. They're not gonna make it anywhere in the East. So they need to get another superstar. And what?
Danny Ainge is the best executive in the league. Don't give such massive disrespect to him.
They're done. They need to get another superstar. And Kemba Walker last year did not pan out well. Jason Tatum developing. Jaylen Brown, he's all right. But they need to get that Kevin Durant superstar player.
All right, let me interrupt here, Alex. Sorry. I can't take Leon disrespecting my Celtics like that. We have 2 emerging superstars. Tatum's gonna be a top 5 player in the league in 1 year or 2 years, no time. Jaylen Brown is an elite two-way player. He's one of the best defenders in the league. Marcus Smart's best defender in the league. He's an absolute stud. He's a team guy. Kemba Walker, I think is here for the future, unless obviously these rumors are true about them targeting James Harden. I just don't see it happening. But don't sleep on Danny Ainge. He's going to make a move tonight. We have 3 first-round picks. I can guarantee you he doesn't take those 3 first-round picks where they are. He's either going to try to move up and target a stud in the draft, or he's going to try to trade for a guy like Miles Turner. I see them acquiring some sort of big or some sort of shooting guard. I can see them targeting JJ Redick from New Orleans. But I don't think the Celtics are complacent, as Leon's saying. And I'm maybe thinking that Danny Ainge, being the great GM he is actually kind of negotiating for Harden just to prevent the Nets from getting Harden. Because as Leon touched on, if James Harden goes to the Nets, Kyrie, Harden, and Durant is just an overpowered pairing in the East. So we'll see. But I guarantee you Danny Ainge is not sitting complacent this offseason, and the Celtics will have a really good addition, in the next day or two. It could be tonight with the draft.
Somebody's in love with Danny Ainge, and I totally agree with you, though. The Celtics have kind of been a center by committee team for the past few years, if you will. They really lack that dominant presence in the middle, and I think that's something they need. And I think a Miles Turner is a really interesting option for them. And yeah, I agree. Like, if Harden gets to the Nets, then they have to be the favorite for the East going forwards. Obviously, you got a Kevin Durant, who's probably one of the top 2 players in the NBA when he's healthy. James Harden is amazing. He's an MVP candidate pretty much every single year. Kyrie Irving, obviously we know what he can do. I think the biggest problem for that team is Kyrie and the attitude of the team. If Steve Nash can properly manage the egos, then they have to be the favorite of the East. But let's talk about the East. Obviously the Heat are returning Eastern Conference champions. The Bucks are really good. The Celtics are good. The Sixers are looking to add on to Simmons and Embiid. The Nets, we just talked about the Nets. Who is the favorite for the East? Who is, the number 2 team, and who's maybe a sleeper team that could steal the East like the Heat did last year?
Well, I'll say this. I think whoever gets James Harden in the East becomes the immediate favorite, assuming it's one of these top teams here. If he goes to Philadelphia and a Ben Simmons swap, as some people are kind of rumoring, I think that Philly becomes the best team in the East with him and Tobias Harris and obviously Joel Embiid, who's the top center in the league. Or if the Celtics get him somehow in a Kemba, Gordon Hayward, and draft pick swap, I think they're the immediate favorite in the East. If the Nets get him with Harden and Kyrie, Kevin Durant and Kyrie, they become the favorites in the East. So we'll see. But I don't think the Heat are going to be the favorites in the East by any means because of these super teams that are now forming in Boston's development, as well as you touched on, the Gordon Hayward situation. I don't see him being in green next year. I think the reason they're extending this is clearly the Celtics and him don't agree on their future, or they're either looking for a trade partner. And so when they find a trade partner, they're going to ask them, do you want him on his like opt-in, 1-year deal, or would you like us to sign him to a longer term, cheaper deal and then trade him, like a sign and trade scenario? Because Boston's doing everything they can. Obviously, if Gordon Hayward opts out and signs somewhere else in free agency, they get no value from him. But Danny Ainge will not let that happen, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and you touched on Harden to the Nets, and obviously pairing him with Kyrie and Durant. That's something we've talked about earlier. Leon, I was wondering what you thought the possibility of a Harden-Kyrie swap would be with the Rockets. Do the Nets even consider that? Is that something that the Rockets consider? What do you think of a Harden-Kyrie swap to pair Harden and Durant together?
If I was a GM for the Nets, I'll take that in a heartbeat, a Kyrie Harden swap. I believe Harden is way better than Kyrie, but I don't think that's gonna happen. I think they're gonna try to pair up those 3 together, and I don't think that's gonna happen though.
You have to imagine KD wouldn't allow the Nets to just get rid of Kyrie like that, right? I mean, obviously they went to Brooklyn together, knowing they wanted to play together. You can't imagine Harden's gonna say, "Hey, let's trade Kyrie for Harden." I mean, sorry, Durant's gonna say, "Let's trade Kyrie for Harden," right, Leon?
Yeah. I don't think that's gonna happen, but
yeah, who do you give up as the Nets to acquire Harden, though? Like obviously the Rockets are going to want a king's ransom for Harden. He's been their superstar for years now and almost won an MVP there. Like, who do you give up to go get Harden?
I think you give up a boatload of draft picks, first-round draft picks in the future years. You also give up a rising superstar in Karis LeVert, maybe a point guard in Spencer Dinwiddie. And
What
then
about Jared Allen as well, right?
yeah, Jared Allen too. So I believe those three are the key pieces in the Harden trade. They want to acquire Harden.
I'm with Leon. Just look at what the Lakers did last year. That's exactly what the Nets need to try to do this year. Trade all of your young players as the Lakers did with Josh Hart and Lonzo and Brandon Ingram. And that deal worked out for both sides, right? They gave up first-round picks as well as their young players, young developing players. The Nets don't need any developing players right now. They need to make a run for the NBA Finals. They should be favorites out of the East immediately if they get James Harden, Kyrie, and Kevin Durant together on the same team somehow.
So assuming Harden goes to the Nets, are they not only the favorites of the East, but the favorites for the title in general?
Absolutely. Absolutely. They have to be.
Absolutely not. LeBron James would destroy Kevin Durant, Harden, and Kyrie-led Nets.
He couldn't do it. He couldn't do it against the Warriors. He's not going to be able to do it against the Nets. That Nets team is better than the Warriors.
It's funny how everyone just teams up on LeBron when he wins a championship. It's just funny and how everyone just goes to the East.
He didn't make the playoffs last year, and he had to team up and go get Anthony Davis, Danny Green, Dwight Howard, all these stars to pair up with. And he paired himself up with the top 5 player in the league, and Anthony Davis. So let's not act like he's winning all by himself over there in LA.
It's just funny how everyone goes to the East.
You guys see, LeBron was really impressive last year, but, he's like 35, 36 years old at this point. When does he start to really regress and not perform as the LeBron that we know him to be?
He won't regress. He aged like fine wine. He will not regress.
Wow, that's so unrealistic. I imagine he has, maybe 2-3 more years left, and then he'll kind of he'll be on the Kobe Bryant path there, where Kobe kind of just totally declined into a role player that the Lakers just felt obligated to use. So I think LeBron actually will hang it up earlier than Kobe, just to, avoid kind of that role that Kobe had with the Lakers, where it was kind of an awkward, like, if you weren't Kobe Bryant, you wouldn't be on our team anymore.
Can you turn that down though? Like as LeBron, can you turn down saying, I'm not going to play these last few years that I know I have in me because I don't want to, play not at the level I was before. I almost see LeBron kind of taking I'm going to take a pay cut here, and then we're going to go out and get another guy to pair with Anthony Davis, and then it's going to be like Anthony Davis and then this other guy, and then me is kind of like the third guy, and then we're going to make a run at one more title. Like I could almost see him kind of pulling that off in a few years.
That's possible. But the thing is, if he's on a supermax contract, whatever he's on, Anthony Davis obviously on another supermax contract. Now they get Dennis Schroeder. Like at some point, he's going to be getting paid too much alongside Anthony Davis to have enough, star power around him. If LeBron's not playing at the level of like, top 3 player in the league, right? Obviously, he played like an absolute stud throughout the whole season, especially the playoffs there. That's why the Lakers won. Like, I don't think Anthony Davis and Dennis Schroeder together with LeBron becoming a role player, I don't think that team ever wins an NBA Finals, especially with all these super teams we're seeing. And if Brooklyn can somehow get these 3 guys together, we'll see that could dominate the NBA for the next 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, obviously not, but say Schroeder's out, right? Schroeder's out in like 3-4 years, something like that. 5 years down the line, LeBron's like 39, something around that age, wants to make a run at one more title. AD is still in LA. What's stopping LeBron from taking a big pay cut on his next contract? Maybe sign like a 1-year contract for not a lot of money. Obviously, money's not really a problem for LeBron. He's got 15 million houses around LA for hundreds of millions of dollars each. Money's not an issue. What's stopping LeBron from taking a big pay cut, saying, Lakers, let's re-sign AD. Let's get another, big time star. Maybe it's an up and coming guy 5 years down the line, and just saying, let's go get one more title and see if we can do it.
I think if you look at LeBron's contract next year, he can either opt out or opt in and go to free agency. And I think that time period for next year can be the time where LeBron takes a pay cut. But I don't believe it. LeBron's still nasty, a GOAT. So, he thought win 2 more championships.
2 more championships? Wow.
Yes.
Okay. On top of what he's already won. Okay. Yeah, and I can see that happening. I think it'll be definitely an uphill climb given the Nets and the Warriors returning. But it's definitely a realistic possibility.
Let's quickly talk about the draft tonight. Let's go through. Alex, we'll start with you. Who's your top 3 picks in order, and do you see those 3 teams staying put?
Oh, I definitely don't see those three teams staying put. I think the Warriors get out of there. I think they trade that pick and go get someone else. But I think you have to say LaMelo Ball is probably 1 or 2. Wiseman has to be 1 or 2 as well, maybe even a third.
Give me your
And
three,
then
Alex.
maybe
Alex, give me your three. Give me your three in order.
Yeah, so my top three would have to be what most people are talking about. Wiseman, Edwards, and Ball, just a little bit reordered. I think Anthony Edwards is the best player in this draft. I love him coming out of Georgia. He's a great shooting guard. He can score the ball. He's a competitor. He's fiery. He's got the passion. I think he's the best player in the draft. That's why I have him going first to the Timberwolves. Number 2, I think James Wiseman, if the Warriors decide to pick, will be the Warriors selection. He's a rim dominant center. He can protect the rim. He's got great feet. He's great in the post. I think if he develops a three-point shot, he can fit in great with this Warriors team, and really fills a role that the Warriors haven't had while this dynasty has been going on, and that's a dominant center. And number 3, I think the Hornets take the best player available, still on the board. That is LaMelo Ball out of, I don't even know, wherever he's from. Great scorer, can shoot the ball really well. 6'7" point guard. Don't see that very often. I think that has to be the best way that those 3 teams can go with their picks.
Leon, your top 3?
Everyone's talking about how LaMelo Ball is going to be in the top 3. Even though he's my favorite player, I believe LaMelo Ball is going to be going to top 5, actually. I think he's going to slip down. So my first pick, the Timberwolves are going to select Anthony Edwards, the best scorer in this draft, the best potential offensive player. Number 2, I believe the Warriors are going to take the center from Memphis, James Wiseman. And number 3, the Charlotte Hornets are going to take the European from Israel, Denny Avdija.
Wow, all right. I agree with you on LaMelo being my favorite player in the draft as well. I think he's a generational scorer, a great passer like his brother Alonzo. Really lengthy point guard, 6'7". You don't really see that too often. Kind of compare him to Ben Simmons, but he can shoot the ball so much better. Kind of matches today's NBA better. Scouts questioning his defensive ability. We'll see how he holds up in the playoffs. But I don't think it'll matter too much with that length. You can kind of teach him to be a better defender. On to the second pick. I'm with Alex. Not sure if the Warriors sit there and take a rookie, but if they do, I think it's James Wiseman. They have a need at center. Moving on to the third pick. I think it's Anthony Edwards. Obviously, you guys touched on why he's such a special prospect. A little undersized, maybe 6'2". Not really what you're looking for in a shooting guard in today's NBA, but he really has ability. I'd compare him to kind of a James Harden in terms of his scoring ability. And I think he's an all-around pretty good prospect. And I don't think the big 3 gets disrupted, as Leon's kind of predicting that LaMelo Ball slips to 4 or 5 or wherever you think he ends up. But that's a wrap on our NBA draft segment. Thanks for joining us, and can't wait to see what happens tonight. All right, as we begin our college football segment now, I'm joined by Leon and Alex. Another interesting week in college football, but I want to start in Ann Arbor, where Michigan took another tough loss this week to Wisconsin. Alex, what does that tell you about the future of Jim Harbaugh?
Yeah, this is a really tough loss for Michigan. It was really kind of one of their first big-time games this year, and obviously they got blown out. I think a lot of people had a lot of optimism for Michigan coming into this season. Joe Milton looked really good in his first game. It was the first time that Jim Harbaugh really recruited a quarterback and had his guy at QB. And Milton's looked worse and worse as this season's gone on. He is young, but some of the mistakes he's made are mistakes that you don't see in other young quarterbacks in college football. And so I think Harbaugh's probably done. I think this is the end of the line. He hasn't beaten Ohio State ever, I think. He's never had great success in seasons. Got blown out last year by Alabama in a bowl game. Hasn't had great success in bowl games, and I think the people in Ann Arbor are fed up with him.
All right, so Leon, assuming it is his last year in Ann Arbor, where do you think he goes next? Is it the NFL? Is it as an assistant coach somewhere? Or should he just hang up the shoes and retire?
I believe he ain't going anywhere next because he should retire. He proved that he can't do it in college football. He proved that he can't do it in NFL. So, I believe he should just retire. He's not proven to be a worthy coach of signing a new contract with a different team or, college.
Alex, what do you think he should do next? Alex, what do you think he should do next?
Yeah, I think I think like a coordinator position would be good for him. I think he could probably do that well. I think it just depends on where he goes then, whether it's the NFL or whether it's college football. And I think he'd work in either scenario. I think he'd probably be better apt to be a assistant coach in the NFL and a coordinator in college football, but either one works.
And he did have some success in San Francisco there, right? Colin Kaepernick's best years of his career were under him. He's proven he can be a good coach at times, but obviously it hasn't worked out in Michigan, so we'll see where that goes. Now I want to move on to Florida. They impressed without Kyle Pitts. Alex, do you think they're the fifth best team in college football outside of the obvious Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, and
Notre Dame?
Yeah.
I think they are. They looked really, really impressive. Kyle Trask is playing like a Heisman candidate this year. Kyle Pitts is probably one of the best pass catchers in the upcoming draft. Like he's a monster tight end. Can't block very well, but that's not his role. His role is to be a mismatch guy. And without Pitts, they just dominated an Arkansas team that had put up a fight against some pretty good teams this year. And so Arkansas, obviously not one of the greatest teams, but that's still a very, very impressive win when you go out and beat an Arkansas team by 30. So I think they are. And I think even though they lost to Texas A&M, I think they're the better team. I think that was an off day for Florida. I don't like Texas A&M a lot. They got shellacked by Alabama, and I think Florida could put up a better fight against Bama if they see him in the SEC championship.
All right. Leon, I want to ask you about the best non-quarterback prospect in the draft. Who do you think should be drafted highest out of the non-quarterbacks?
I believe it's the O-line from Oregon, Penei Sewell. He is the best non-quarterback in the draft, even though he's not a position. Like he's like not like
Not a skill player, yeah.
Yeah, skill player. He's an amazing O-lineman, probably one of the highest graded O-linemen in the century, and he can block. He can be really good for any team.
All right, Alex, if you're on the clock and you're not drafting a quarterback, who are you drafting?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Penei Sewell from Oregon. Patrick Surtain looks good. Micah Parsons looked good. I think I'm going to have to go with Sewell, though. He was really, really impressive last year as just a sophomore. Dropped out of this year's season to train for the draft. I think he'll come into the draft really impressive. He's a great character. He's a great team leader for Oregon when he was there. I think, if Lawrence doesn't improve much this year from last year, we haven't seen that much of him this year. Obviously, he's been out with COVID for a little bit. I think Penei Sewell could be the best player overall in the draft. I really like him. I think he's one of the best O-linemen we've seen in a while. Yeah, so I'd have to go with Penei Sewell.
I think I'm going with Jamar Chase just because you look at how valuable receivers are in the league. A guy like DK Metcalf has looked like one of the best prospects in that draft, despite being drafted, 63rd or 64th. Having good receivers is so important. Guys who can win a ball up in the air, get good separation and all that. So speaking of the best pass catchers in the draft, Alex, who are some guys to watch out for that are kind of under the radar besides the obvious Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith?
Yeah, so this is another really, really deep receiver class, kind of like last year's. They got a lot of guys who have really performed well in college and could translate that to the NFL. I was looking at some mock drafts yesterday, and I saw guys like Tylan Wallace, Chris Olave going in the third or fourth round. That's crazy. I mean, these guys are really, really good players, and they're going third round, fourth round, something like that. So there's definitely the possibility that a team like gets a gem like Pittsburgh did this year with Chase Claypool. And so personally, I'm watching out for Kyle Pitts. I mentioned him earlier. He's a great mismatch tight end out of Florida. Jalen Waddle's another really good player. I like him. He's got a lot of speed. He plays with fight. He's really talented pass catcher. He can go up and snag that thing. And maybe even Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's a really speedy guy out of USC. We saw Michael Pittman have some success out of USC the other day against whoever the Colts played at Titans, I believe it was. And so I think he could be another USC wide receiver that comes in and has some success.
All right, Leon, who's your favorite pass catcher in this draft?
My favorite pass catcher in this draft has opted out this year is Jamar Chase. He's shown he was the best receiver as a junior last year under Joe Burrow. He won the Biletnikoff Award basically the national best receiver. He had 1,780 yards and 20 touchdowns. This dude is a stud, and I believe the Bengals are going to draft him and pair them up with Joey Burrow and Jamar Chase.
Wow, hot take there. That's going to wrap up our college football segment. Thanks for joining us.
All right, now we move into our soccer segment, and I'm joined here with Thad, Austin, and Nick. A lot of interesting storylines coming out of the soccer world, a lot of stuff to talk about. Let's start with the debate around the international break. Obviously, we know the situation with COVID this year. Last season ended later than it normally would have. This season started on time, so players didn't really have an opportunity to kind of recoup, to rest. They didn't have any preseason really. So in your guys' minds, should this international break be used as an opportunity for players to, kind of like, recoup, rest up, continue to work on their health, or should they continue to play games as is scheduled?
I think that it needs to be a time for players to recoup, because you can't create a team that has a solid level of fitness if they're not given time to rest. I mean, Card, because you're a PSG fan. I mean, the Champions League final was what, September 1st or August 28th or whatever it was. It was late. It was very late in the season. Yeah. And I mean, I'm a United fan, so I watched United through to the semifinal of the Europa League, and that was late as well. And then they were given 2 weeks, and the season restarted. That's not nearly enough time. And United had no preseason. PSG had no preseason. You can't. Yeah, not really. Nobody did, unless you weren't in a European competition. But I mean, that's as we see with Liverpool now. I mean, they've been dealt an entire starting 11 worth of injuries or COVID tests, COVID positive tests. I mean, you can't build a reasonable squad if you don't have time to recoup.
Yeah, and do you think that... Go ahead, Thad.
So I agree with that, but at the same time, like, if we're speaking like about what they actually can do, like, they can't cancel international breaks. Like, the Euros are already a year late, and we're just getting to we're almost done with qualifiers, and if we canceled international, that would like just destroy like so many aspects of like the actual soccer world. But I think you're right. Like, the players are not getting a break. I remember seeing a quote from Dejan Lovren essentially just complaining about it, saying he got 8 days off of a preseason break. Like, he genuinely, like, no players had any time, and they've just been worked, and like, it's really the reason for these constant injuries.
Yeah, and that I agree with you. You can't ditch the international break entirely. I get that. But I mean, Spain and Germany and England and all these teams, England plays today versus Iceland. But these teams are playing, they're supposed to be playing 2 games a week. Now they're playing 3 games a week, or 3 games in this 10-day period for their international team. Plus, then they come back, they have 2 days, and especially for the big European teams, you have a game on Saturday or Sunday, you have a Champions League game midweek, and then you have another game the next weekend. That's 6 games in the span of 2 weeks. That's putting far too much, I think, stress on the players. And I do agree with you, though. There is qualifiers that need to be done. The CONCACAF World Cup qualifiers start in March, and the Euros, like you said, have already started. It's just, how do you create kind of a happy medium between those two?
Yeah, it's definitely a tough line to walk. Obviously, rest is crucial to like being able to perform properly, and I almost think it's beneficial to the fans to have the players take like a certain amount of leave from the game, because I think you have a better product on the field. It's really, like you guys said, it's how you make it work. And like the amount of games being played now are in a week are ridiculous. Like, are we going to see like the true full extent of what players can do in this upcoming next Champions League group stage set of games? Or, it's like, maybe a team who shouldn't really be going through gets through because the team they're playing and the team they beat isn't at their full strength. It doesn't like have a bunch of guys injured, or maybe superstar is not fully rested and not able to play at their best. And I want to talk now about COVID cases. So Salah just a few weeks, I think it was maybe a week ago, something like that, tested positive for COVID. He was retested again recently and tested positive again. Liverpool already a depleted squad, tons of injuries on the defense and injuries just all over the place. Nick, how do you see Salah being out affecting Liverpool going forward in both the Champions League and the Premier League, given the fact that they have a bunch of guys injured and rest is at a premium right now?
I mean, I think we can all say that Liverpool looks up to Salah as a matter of scoring terms. I mean, he's obviously one of their top scorers. With these players injured and Salah testing positive, I don't see a very, very promising future for Liverpool right now. I think going back to the conversation before, I mean, things do happen, and no matter what, teams are either going to win or they're going to lose, and you can blame it on if they're physically ready, but I think that Liverpool doesn't have a promising future as it looks right now.
I think that Salah, like getting COVID could be a good chance for like Firmino and Jota to really like flourish, because I mean Salah takes up so many goals and he's not the least selfish player in the world, and if he like while he's gone, it'll be Jota and Firmino, both of which could play on the wing. Like they both can shoot with either foot, and like I don't know, I could see like I mean someone has to pick up his weight or they're really gonna just be bad. And if I could see like both of them just scoring a lot more, and Firmino hasn't scored in a while for Liverpool, so
I was going to say, you bring up the point of Firmino being able to score with both feet. Recently, it hasn't looked like he's been able to score with either foot, but I think it's not so much at this point. I mean, obviously Salah and Mane being missing is a huge blow to Liverpool, but you really got to look at the defense and the midfield, which is now depleted. I mean, their defense they're going to basically have to play their under 23s defense like almost entirely, because now Robertson is out. He went out on international duty. Jordan Henderson in the midfield is out due to a hamstring injury, international. Joe Gomez, international duty. And that's where we go back to the last conversation of the resting, and I agree with Nick. It does not look like a promising near future for Liverpool. I just think the squad is far too depleted to have any real chance to win a serious set of games.
So, given the fact that they're not at their full strength going forward and probably won't be at full strength for a long time, how does this affect, Jota's development as a player, and how does it affect Liverpool's standing in the Premier League and the Champions League? Obviously undefeated in the Champions League so far. They're performing quite well in the Premier League. Do they drop some games? How far do they fall in the Premier League table, if at all? How does this affect their Champions League going forwards?
I think it'll probably boost Jota's game, because, I mean, I guess you can look at what happened last season with Marcus Rashford being injured for 6 months, 8 months, whatever it was, with an ankle injury, and how much Mason Greenwood flourished in his place. I mean, I think it could really be a good thing, like Thad was saying, with both Mane and Salah being out, that Firmino and Jota may have a really good chance to continue developing and to really get some goals.
I want to talk now about the Barcelona wage cuts. So La Liga recently handed, I think it was Atletico and Madrid and Barcelona wage cuts going forwards. And this, I looked at it and it reminded me a lot of the salary cap that we have here in the States. Obviously, with teams starting to, wage gaps are increasing exponentially. Guys are getting paid tons of money. What do you think the odds that something like an American salary cap for like La Liga or for all 5 leagues or for the Champions League, something like that, how do you see the odds of that going forward, and how do you think that would affect the game? Would it be good? Would it be bad? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it would be really good. Like players are extremely selfish. We've seen it time and time again, and it would affect like teams being able to sign like just a crazy amount of players. Like Man City, they've signed so many players since Pep got there, and it's like they've spent, I think, close to, if not $1 billion on players. And like if they had a wage gap, it would just be a completely different story. And teams have broken the transfer, the transfer laws, and some have always gotten around it. Like Chelsea's transfer ban got shortened, Man City's Champions League ban got removed. Like it seems like these teams are just getting around their punishments, and if we had a wage gap, it's kind of hard to get around that. So
I definitely agree with that. I think it would allow for these smaller teams to have a better chance at getting into that top 6, that top 4, region with, kind of knocking teams like PSG and Man City down a couple of pegs because they just won't be able to spend nearly as much money on players.
Yeah, real quick before we go, Nick, what do you think about that?
I think I'm gonna have to agree with everyone. I think in terms of what Thaddeus said, it'll force teams to obey the certain rules that they have been put against them. It'll make teams have to make certain decisions and not just be the team that gets away with everything.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you all. I think it'll definitely make the leagues more competitive. I think it'll make them more interesting. I think you don't have a team like PSG that can just run away with Ligue 1 every single time. And I think it just makes everything more interesting. And as fans, that's what we want. And that'll be enough for our soccer segment today. Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you for the takes, guys. We'll see you next week.
All right, as we transition into our NFL segment now, I'm joined by Parker, Nolan, and Alex. We're still trying to get Leon's connection, so we'll see if he joins here. But I want to start off in Miami. The Dolphins improved to 6-3 under Tua. They're now 3-0 under Tua, 6-3 on the season. Nolan, are they in the hunt for AFC champs, Super Bowl contenders with Tua in a crowded AFC?
At 6-3, they're absolutely playoff contenders. I don't see them going to AFC Championship. I don't see them going to the Super Bowl. There are just way too many powerhouses in the AFC right now. The Chiefs have just been ridiculous all season. The Steelers still undefeated. I don't see the Dolphins getting by the Chiefs. I don't see the Dolphins getting by the Steelers. I don't see the Dolphins getting by the Ravens even, who have looked a little bit weaker lately. But still with a young quarterback, only 3 games in, we haven't really seen what Tua's going to be the rest of his career. I think right now what's carrying the Dolphins is that defense with guys like Emmanuel Ogbah and Christian Wilkins on the defensive line, and then Xavier Howard in the secondary. Their defense has just looked outstanding. We'll have to see where Tua gets their offense the rest of the season. I just don't see them getting by some of those bigger teams in the AFC.
Parker, do you think they can win the AFC East with the Bills?
That's what I was going to say. I think right now they're my favorite to win the AFC East. The Patriots, although I believe they're going to come back a little bit, I don't believe it's going to be enough to surpass the Dolphins. And the Bills, I don't know. I just seen the Bills have these close losses and these close wins. But I think Tua and the Dolphins, they're cruising through their season right now, and I think they'll be able to take that AFC East.
All right, Alex, who do you have coming out of AFC East?
Yeah, I think it has to be the Bills. I like Josh Allen. I think he's played really well this year. I like him as one of the top 10 probably quarterbacks in the NFL. And I think the Bills are too talented to not be the AFC East champions. So I'm going to have to go with them.
All right. Let's stay in the AFC. The Ravens lose to the Pats. The Pats now are, 4-5, I think. They're still on the hunt, as crazy as it seems, with all those bad losses. I see Cam Newton looked more like himself. Jacoby Myers and Damiere Byrd emerging as good receivers on the Patriots. When Edelman comes back, they have obviously they're going to play the Jets again. We'll see. They have a couple easy wins in their schedule. Alex, do you think they can still make the playoffs as a wild card, assuming they can't pass Buffalo or Miami in the AFC East?
I think the Patriots are done. I think Cam is too inconsistent to lead this team to playoff berth. I think the AFC, obviously, it's a weaker conference, so maybe they could sneak in. I just don't see it as a possibility. I like the Bills, and I don't think the AFC East gets two wildcard teams, like would be the case if I think Dolphins are up there, and the Bills probably take that division, and the Dolphins get a wildcard spot. So that'd mean the Patriots would have to get a second wildcard spot, and I just don't see that happening.
All right, Noel. The Ravens, obviously, that's a disappointing loss for them, especially in those conditions as a running team. Lamar still doesn't look like himself. The running game didn't get going. J.K. Dobbins, Mark Ingram. Is this a bad sign for them? Should we be really worried, or they'll figure it out and they're still contenders for the Super Bowl?
I think it's absolutely a bad sign for the Ravens. I mean, they've just looked weak since that loss to the Steelers a couple weeks ago. I mean, they just have not been able to get it together as a team. Lamar's not looked like himself, as you said. Their run game hasn't really been able to get going. They don't have that one guy like they did last year. I mean, it's been a committee between Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins, and Mark Ingram, and it just hasn't been working for them. And then the pass game for the Ravens just hasn't been going at all. I mean, they've got talent on the outside, right, with Mark Andrews, Marquise Brown. They just have not been able to utilize it. We've seen a very down year for Mark Andrews after a great season last year. And then Marquise Brown just has not been targeted. He hasn't been getting his receptions. They just have not been able to figure it out lately.
All right, let's go to somebody who's playing, more like Lamar last year. Kyler Murray. Obviously, everyone's seen it at this point, that Hail Mary to DeAndre Hopkins. Last second play, he makes that incredible catch over 3 people. They beat the Bills in an impressive win. Parker, is he the MVP right now?
Oh, MVP. No. I think it's still gonna be Patrick Mahomes because record-wise, I mean, stat-wise, it could be Kyler Murray, but record-wise, you're looking at Patrick Mahomes has an easy division championship. Kyler Murray still has to fight with the Seahawks, the Rams, all those good teams to get his division title. And I do think that the Cardinals will represent the NFC West in the playoffs, but I don't think he'll be able to surpass Patrick Mahomes for that MVP.
All right, Alex, I want to talk about Hopkins now. Is he the best receiver in the league after that incredible catch? And obviously he's been producing all year with Kyler Murray. He's the best receiver in the league right now.
No way. And I was talking about this with Nolan. I'm biased because I don't like DeAndre Hopkins as a person. I think he's kind of a dink. And so I have to go with Davante Adams. I like Davante Adams. I think he's the best route runner in the league. I think he has the best release in the league. I think he's the best at creating space. I think his connection with Aaron Rodgers is the best QB to wide receiver connection in the league. I love his game all around. I love his ability to make plays. He's great in the red zone. He's great at creating space. He's good at all the little things. And so I'm gonna have to put him over DeAndre Hopkins.
Nolan,
right, well, obviously there's a really, really tight top 3 for the NFL wide receiver debate, right? You've got Davante Adams, you've got D-Hop, and you've got Julio Jones. You can't go wrong picking any one of them as the best receiver in the league. For me, I think right now it has to be DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, that catch against the Bills was just ridiculous. Going over 3 Bills defenders and somehow being able to hold on to that ball. He has the best catch radius in the league. He's got the best hands in the league. And that connection between D-Hop and Kyler Murray just looks outstanding this season. I think if they can continue that the next couple of seasons, D-Hop will emerge as the clear-cut number 1. So, yeah, right now I think D-Hop is the best wide receiver in the league.
Where do you guys see DK Metcalf in that conversation? I mean, obviously he's been emerging. His statistics are great this season. Where do you guys see him as the top receiver?
Top 10.
Yeah, he's top 10.
No way.
I think he's a bit overrated, though, right now. Obviously, he's a great guy emerging. I just think right now he's a bit overrated. People have them in their top 5, even their top 3. I think he's definitely top 10. He's been a little bit overrated this season.
He has he has the top potential he has the size, the strength, the speed. I just don't think he has the veteran route running as you see from guys like D-Hop, Allen Robinson, and those guys who just can get open on any play. Agreed.
All right, let's talk about another top receiver in the league. Michael Thomas, obviously, hasn't been having the year we expected coming off of last season's historic performance. The Saints have been performing well. Obviously, they get another win this week. They beat the Bucs twice. But Drew Brees has I think 5 broken ribs and a collapsed lung. He'll be out a few weeks there. Alex, do you think Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill, that combination, can they hold it down in New Orleans, or do the Bucs surpass them in that division?
Famous Jameis, yikes! That's all I gotta say. I am interested to see how Sean Payton plays this. He's a really creative offensive coach, and so I think it'd be interesting to see, and maybe if he rolls with a little 2 QB game. Maybe he lines up Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston on the field at the same time. I saw Ole Miss in college football do this earlier in the year where Lane Kiffin was trying to figure out who was going to play at QB. And so he just lined them up both on offense and had one play receiver. And we saw a little bit of a quarterback to quarterback connection. And I think that'll be interesting to see if Sean Payton goes in that direction. I think Jameis will be the starter, and I think Hill will kind of be like a side piece, maybe like a guy who comes in for like a series or plays, a certain amount of snaps per game on offense at quarterback. But I think it'll be Jameis, and I think it'll be, if Sean Payton can manage famous Jameis's turnovers, it'll be all right for the Saints.
Nolan, how do you think the Saints and the Bucs, how do you think that division turns out with Brees out a couple weeks here?
I would say the Bucs are still the favorite in that division, despite a few rough weeks. They looked really good against the Panthers. They got Ronald Jones in the running game going. Finally started to connect with every single receiver on the season. We saw Antonio Brown with a good game. I think the Bucs will definitely come out of that division on top, especially with Drew Brees now out a few weeks. Bucs have they've looked a lot better, or looked a lot better this week after a few rough weeks. So I think they're starting to trend back up.
Parker, who do you have coming out of that division?
Saints. They've just looked unstoppable since what's their last loss? Week 3 or something? They haven't lost since.
Yeah.
And it's just been all lights out. Kamara, Breeze, all of them. Thomas, not so much. And I think that they're winning, it doesn't matter. But for Michael Thomas, it might matter. So I don't know if he can help them. I think he's helping them succeed with what he's doing. But I think since he's not bringing in the stats, he's not going to be happy with what's going on.
All right, let's talk about the NFC West again. I say competitive division. The Rams beat the Seahawks. Obviously, the Cardinals get that Hail Mary win. So now the Cardinals sit at the top of that division, but there's 3 teams sitting at 6-3. And then obviously the 49ers doesn't look like they're going to make the playoffs. Alex, who do you think comes out of that division?
Dude, Seattle is so bad. Oh, my God. It's awful watching them play. I cannot stand it. They look horrendous on defense. This is the biggest eyesore of a defense I've ever seen. It has to be the Cardinals. The Cardinals have looked really impressive. It's been interesting to watch Cliff Kingsbury's air raid offense kind of take form this season. Big jump from last year. Kyler Murray's looked well improved. DeAndre Hopkins has been a great addition. I think it has to be the Cardinals. And maybe the Rams get a wild card spot and maybe Seattle too, but I think the Cardinals are the best team in the NFC West.
Nolan, what about you? What do you think?
Oh, I think it's pretty obvious at this point. It's got to be the Cardinals, right? I mean, the Seahawks have just looked terrible lately. I mean, as Carter said, their defense just awful. Russell Wilson hasn't looked like himself the past couple of weeks. Kyler Murray, right, and that the Kyler Murray-DeAndre Hopkins connection has just looked fantastic. He's even utilizing Christian Kirk, Larry Fitzgerald in that offense. I think the Cardinals absolutely come out on top. And we saw the game against the Bills. They were able to pull off that close game win with the comeback there. So I think Cardinals come out on top of that division. I don't think there's much of a debate there unless Brandon or Parker, you have something to say about that. But I think it's the Cardinals coming out of that division.
I think it's
going to be close. I think Seattle, now we see how much, even though they do not like to run the ball much, now we're seeing how much a running back like Chris Carson kind of helps that offense produce. And now that he's out, they have not looked good on offense or defense. They've looked okay on offense, but I think with him coming back, this week or next week, they'll be able to turn things up and really make it come down to the end with the Cardinals.
I agree. I think, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, that offense led by Russell Wilson, who I think is a top 3, arguably the best player in the NFL. Yeah, they're going to make the playoffs. I think they win that division. And I still think the Cardinals, as a wild card team, are contenders to win the Super Bowl and make it to the Super Bowl and all that. But I think that Russell Wilson and the Seahawks will get that done. Let's move to the NFC East, or the NFC least. and Nolan's favorite team, the Giants, get a big win over the Eagles. And it's hard to call it a big win when they're 2-3-7, whatever they are.
Is that like putting them at first place or something? Like,
yeah, I mean, at this point, right? Like the Giants are maybe favorites to win that division. Nolan, who do you think comes out of that division?
All right, this division is going to be very fun to watch the rest of the season. Despite how awful every single team is, this is going to be one of the most interesting races I've ever seen. Ready? The top 2 teams in the division, the Eagles at 3-5-1 and the Giants at 3-7. I mean, we've never seen anything like that before. But, okay, so this division will be very close the rest of the season. Giants schedule the rest of the way. They've got a few tough games with the Cardinals and the Ravens coming up, and the Seahawks, and then the Bengals, Cowboys, and Browns are winnable games for them. The Eagles, the rest of the season, looks similar. All right, it's the same division. They've got the Cardinals, they've got the Packers, and then they've got the football team and the Cowboys, which should be wins for them. It'll be super close. I say right now the Eagles are the favorites just because they've got the better record right now, and it looks like a little bit of an easier schedule. But it'll be interesting to watch, to say the least.
Parker, who do you think makes it out of that division?
I have no clue. It's whoever gets lucky.
It's true. They don't really deserve to be talked about on our
Whoever can
podcast.
somehow beat a top 20 team one time and find a way to make
All right.
playoff.
Alex, who do you think comes out?
I mean, I think this points to a need in the NFL to get rid of whoever wins the division makes the playoffs. Because I think all of these teams are like, Eagles, Giants, Cowboys, and football team have to be like, bottom probably 10 teams in the NFL, bottom 12, something like that. And the fact that one of them is going to make the playoffs and have a home field advantage is absolutely outrageous. I think, the NFL has to get rid of the division winner rule and just go, best, whatever it is, like 7 best teams in each conference makes the playoffs. So that way you avoid having a gross team like the Giants or the Eagles, who've looked atrocious this year, make the playoffs.
Or maybe we're ready for another division mix-up next year.
Right.
Division mix-up, maybe?
What?
Division
I mean,
mix-up?
we definitely don't want to be watching a 3-7 Giants team in a serious hunt to make the playoffs. As much as Nolan might like it, it's pretty terrible for the NFL.
I would love to.
So we'll
play some.
That's true. Let's go to the Thursday night football game. The Titans lose to the Colts. Another loss for the Titans. They didn't look good. Alex, should we be worried about them to make the playoffs in a crowded AFC there?
No. I don't think so. And I think the Titans will end up coming out of the AFC South. The Colts have looked, I think, surprisingly impressive, at least to me this season. Rookie wide receiver Michael Pittman Jr. had a great game. I think even with how good the Colts have played this year, I think the Titans have to come away with that division. I'm not really worried about them going forwards. I think they're too good of a team, and I think Vrabel is too good of a coach.
All right, Nolan, what do you think?
I would agree there. I think there's definitely going to be a battle for the top of the division. I think the Colts are going to come out of the top of the division there, but I think the Titans have a real shot at scooping up a wild card, especially with the expanded playoffs this year. As the card said, Vrabel, great coach, a lot of talent on that team with Derrick Henry, A.J. Brown, Corey Davis. It's a very talented team. I think absolutely they come out with a wild card in that division. The Colts have just looked so impressive, though, with their defense. Phillip Rivers even putting it together on offense. So the Colts will come out on top in that division, but the Titans will be able to scoop up a wild card spot.
All right, and then really quickly, I want everyone to pick an upset for next week. Nolan, let's start with you.
I've got the Colts over the Packers this week. As I said, Colts defense looked fantastic, and then Green Bay coming off of a close game with the Jaguars. So Colts will take that one.
Alex, who's your upset? Alex, you're muted, man.
Titans over the Ravens. Sorry about that. I think the Titans control the run game, and I think they shut down Lamar Jackson.
Parker, your pick?
Jets over the Chargers. I think the Jets, to get their first win, all you need is a 2-7 team like the Chargers.
Wow. All right, I'm going to go with Raiders over Chiefs. I think the Raiders are no longer pretenders. They're actually contenders in the AFC. I think they're 6-3 now. Derek Carr is playing really well. Obviously, that offense, Josh Jacobs is looking like one of the best backs in the league. We'll see. That's a dominant O-line. If they can get that passing game and that defense, which is playing well, over the hump, I think they make the playoffs, and we just got to start talking about them as a serious contender in the AFC. So that'll wrap up our NFL segment. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk next week. See you, boys. All right, as we begin our second ever golf segment, reflecting on the Masters, I'm joined by Alex and Austin, our golf experts here. It was a fun Masters, maybe not the exciting finish we were all looking for, but a lot of headlines. Let's start with Bryson DeChambeau, the favorite going in. You guys kind of liked his odds there, but he totally disappointed. Wasn't even in contention to win the tournament really early on. So, Austin, what did you see from him, and where do you think he stands in the golf world, heading into future tournaments?
Well, first hole he steps up with his 3-wood and 320 dead straight. It was a beautiful shot. And, you want to start off your first hole on a positive, on a positive stroke. And he did. But then he continued on with the first day, and it was like he couldn't hit a straight drive. Through the entirety of the weekend, he could not hit a putt any shorter than about 3 feet. And even those he was missing. And we talked about it last week, that how important putts are with, I believe it was Phil Mickelson making it to the weekend, which he ended up doing just through putting, because he's a good putter. But Bryson DeChambeau just, I guess, isn't. I think it was good of him, though, to kind of accept that he played poorly. He understood it, and he said that he kind of tried to outmuscle the Masters, and it didn't work for him.
All right, Alex, and then we were kind of talking about how he could revolutionize the sport of golf with a victory, right? Like, kind of players will start training to become these, super muscular guys who can absolutely bomb the ball in, kind of precision and strategy, kind of, less important, but more just absolutely smacking the ball down the fairway and getting a ton of extra yards, focusing less on the short game. Do you think his absolutely atrocious performance in this Masters kind of, takes a step back on that, kind of the way that golf was shifting, it's kind of going to shift back to like the right way to play golf?
Well, that's an interesting point. And I think, if you go look at golfers from previous eras, not this one, they're not the most athletic looking people. And that's kind of where the mantra about, golf not being technically a sport or whatever comes from. And I think that's really changed, as of recently. You have guys like, Rory McIlroy and Bryson DeChambeau and Dustin Johnson and Brooks Koepka and, all these guys who are really, working on their body, working on their health. And they truly are athletes. You've seen Brooks Koepka, he's a big dude. And I don't think that will change. I think the idea of like a revolution of the game where it becomes more of like a long bombers competition, I don't think that'll ever happen, because I think the mantra that you drive for pride and putt for dough still holds true. A 2-inch putt is worth the same as a 350-yard drive. And so, I think golf is always about precision, and the person who can hit their wedges the best and putt the best will always be the favorite to win, or will always be in a good position to win. Doesn't matter how far you drive it. If you can hit your short irons and your putter well, you're going to be a tough person to beat.
Yeah, let's talk about the guy who did. He did all of it, right? He drove well, chipped well, putted well, just all around a great tournament. I believe he's the first ever person to go, shoot sub 20 on the Masters course. Dustin Johnson, who won the Masters. Austin, what'd you see from him, and do you really think he is the best golfer in the world right now and heading forward?
He was just incredible. Augusta is not an easy course to play by any stretch. You can see some of the best golfers to ever exist crumble when it comes to the Masters. I just think that he was so, cool, calm, and collected for the entire weekend, and that really helped him out. Like you said, with the chipping and putting, it was amazing. It was great chipping, great putting, and I think that all comes down to that head game where he really, nothing phases him. Nothing seems to phase Dustin Johnson at all. And I think that really, that's the most important thing that you need as a golfer, is that cool, calm head.
Yeah, and Alex, do you think he is the best golfer in the world heading forward?
Yeah, I think he is, and I think that's the magic of Dustin Johnson is he's a guy who he can really do it all. Like he's a great driver. He can hit the ball really far. One of the original kind of long bombers, if you will. Can't crush it quite as well as DeChambeau can, but he makes up for that in his incredible wedge game, his consistency with his irons, and his ability to, if not putt great, at least putt enough or putt well enough to win. And so I think this was really, it could be a turning point for Dustin because we've seen him time and time again. I think it was the 2015 U.S. Open comes to mind right off my head with Jordan Spieth, in which Spieth won it, where DJ had that lead going into the last round, and he was leading late into the last round, and then he choked it away. And so, like this year, he just, was too much to handle. Had a huge lead, won by a big margin, and didn't even have the opportunity to throw it away. And I think that could really benefit him going forwards.
All right. Let's talk about some of the old guys, right? Tiger, Phil. I mean, guys that made the cut. They weren't really in it at the end because honestly, nobody was besides Dustin. But they did look pretty good. Besides Tiger had, that one bad day. I think he shot a 10 over. But he looked good and Phil was impressive. So Austin, going forward, you think those guys still have a chance to be competing in these major tournaments, right?
I do, at least as far as those two are concerned. Some of the older guys that did play, I think Gary Player was in for the weekend, but he didn't make the cut. He's also a little over 60 years old now. But Phil Mickelson and Tiger Woods Phil Mickelson's just 50 and Tiger Woods is sub 50 still. So I think they still have time where they can compete in these big tournaments. I mean, we saw at the Masters last April with Tiger Woods winning his first one in, 12 years or something like that? 10 years? I think they still have a chance to compete. And I think I said last week that when I was asked if Phil Mickelson was going to be able to make the cut for the weekend, I said it was all going to depend on his chipping and putting, and that's what it really came down to. I mean, yeah, he can drive far, but he chipped and putted well, and he made the cut. Did he end up doing all that well come Sunday? Not really, but I mean, it shows a lot of character that he can still be there at his age.
All right, Alex, do you think Tiger Woods, still has a chance to compete?
Yeah, it definitely does. He was still right up in there up until the final round where he shot +4. Ended up finishing the tournament 1 under. If he just stayed even, he would have finished at 5 under. I think throw out that last round of the Masters, and he was in a good spot up until through Saturday. And yeah, I think he definitely does. He's shown an incredible resilience to continue to compete and to continue to finish high up on the leaderboard. And so, I think he's got a few years left in him before I think he starts to kind of drop off. I think Phil's kind of hit that wall where Phil can't, pull out a win anymore. He's just too old. He's not consistent enough to get it done. I think Tiger has a little bit more time left, but he's definitely running low on time. But yeah, I mean, he could definitely maybe pull out 1 or 2 more wins.
See, Alex, I got a quick question for you. Obviously, Phil Mickelson has hit that 50 mark now, where he's eligible to play for the Champions Tour.
Yep.
But when he does play for the Champions Tour, he blows everyone else out of the water. Yep. I mean, because he's at a skill level where he is so far beyond all these older guys. Where do you think he fits? Do you think he'd ought to be playing on the, going through the Champions, I guess the Champions like tournaments, or do you think that maybe he should lay off of that purely because he's still at a point where he's very good? Because it seems like, go.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't have, my point was he doesn't really have a chance to win any more tournaments on the PGA. But I definitely think he has the talent to continue to make cuts. And I think when he gets to a point where he's having trouble making a cut and maybe he makes the cut, but he finishes like dead last or bottom of the people who did make it, that's when he should start considering playing for the Champions Tour. But I think for the moment, he's still a really good golfer. He's still able to put up some numbers in the PGA. He just doesn't have a shot at winning it anymore.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Yeah.
All right, let's talk some of the international guys. I want to start with Cameron Smith. Obviously, he tied for second, shot 15 under on the tournament. He's out of Australia. He was really impressive, Austin. What did you see from him? And, can he compete for all of these majors in the future?
I mean, I think so. And I think it's something that we saw a lot out of a lot of the top 10 guys was that they're young. They're all young players, and a lot of them were internationals. It's a great thing to see, guys between the ages of 20 and 28-ish playing and competing well. Like you said, I mean, Smith, he played incredibly well, and I think something also that we have to look at is some of the amateurs that were playing. I mean, they were playing incredibly. The amateur who was in Tiger's group, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but I mean, at least for the first 2 days, he kept up. He was right up there playing with Tiger, and he was playing an incredible game. I think, like you said, Smith played a great tournament, great weekend. And I think, that he probably definitely does have what it takes to compete for those Masters maybe later on. Yeah.
All right, yeah, and let's talk about one of those 20-year-olds, as you mentioned, Austin. 22-year-old Sung Jae Im out of South Korea. Obviously, he's another guy who tied for second at 15 under. Alex, what did you see from him this weekend? And, where does he rank amongst those top guys?
He was impressive, yeah, and I think he maybe overstepped a little bit. He put up a great performance today. I don't think that's something that he can necessarily replicate is a consistent top 5 finish in majors. We've seen this with guys before where they will have a really good Masters or something like that, or like Shane Lowry won the Open a few years
he
back.
Won the Open, yeah.
Yeah, and he's in the Masters, and he's in these major tournaments, but he's not necessarily like putting up great numbers. And so the difference between Lowry and Sung Jae Im is Im's a lot younger, and so he can definitely continue to improve. But I think for the moment, this was kind of like one of those fluke tournaments where he was just really on his game, and he was able to put up a great performance. And I see him more of like a middle of the leaderboard, final round type guy.
All right, a lot of headlines. It was a fun weekend. It's always fun to chat some golf. So thanks for that, and we'll talk later. See you, boys.
This podcast was edited by Gabe Aguero.